Right now, St. Louis County is experiencing a budget cut. Choices have to be made and some services have to be cut. A major part of violence prevention is catching people before they can act. I talked to the county medical examiner's office about the struggles it faces.
All homicides show a tragic loss of life.
A look inside a place most people hope they never have to think about. The St. Louis County Medical Examiner's Office. Dr. Gershom Northfleet is the county's chief medical examiner.
And the role of the medical examiner office is to investigate sudden, suspicious, unexpected, and violent deaths.
And behind every case is a family waiting for answers and a community living with the impact. With dreams of becoming a physician since he was a young child, Dr. Northfleet now serves families, often in their worst moments, and another sector of society are dead.
Being able to have an opportunity, one, to solve puzzles, also to be able to provide a voice to my patients. Although they are deceased, there is still a story to tell. That does give me a sense of closure.
Dr. Northfleet says in 2025, his office investigated about 9,000 reportable deaths, performed around 700 autopsies, and classified 93 homicides. He says homicides peaked in 2020 at 134, and from 2020 to 2025, the county saw a decline of about 30%.
Reducing violence is not only a public safety priority, it is paramount to the mission of public health. Continuing progress in this particular arena is going to take investment of all parties and all sectors of our community.
That investment is what county leaders are debating now, with federal ARPA funding set to expire in September. Tom Crease is the county's director of violence reduction, working to connect law enforcement with community partners to prevent gun violence. How do you respond to people who say that these programs are soft on crime or that they just simply don't work?
That's a fair question, and that's one that gets asked a lot. It's one of those, it's a misguided or preconceived idea of what these kind of programs look like before. Where historically there have been programs that came to St. Louis that had that kind of soft on crime idea. It was one of those, well, let's keep giving them another chance, another chance. The other idea, if we were to look at this kind of like a pendulum, is that kind of hard on crime or zero tolerance, like if you jaywalk, you're going to jail type thing. Everyone's going to jail no matter what. And we have seen with both kind of experiences that it doesn't reduce violence or crime in those cases. It actually makes things much worse.
Bill 86 is a request to the county council for $1.7 million as leaders look to keep these programs going when ARPA funding expires in September.
With that money, we hope to bring in and build out some of these support services like street outreach, where we have some of our credible messengers or violence interrupters that we already see working really well in the city, bring them into St. Louis County and work in these kind of high impact areas to help curb some of the violence through conflict mediation.
St. Louis County is having financial issues. Why is it important to pour that $1.7 million into this program?
There's a study that came out several years ago where it looked at the St. Louis area and kind of the cost of violence of that kind of thing. So, and what they found out was for each homicide, it's about $1.1 million lost to taxpayers, either through criminal justice services, ME supports, medical costs, loss of wages, property value, those kind of things. So 1.1 times 93 is over $100 million lost through to taxpayers through gun violence.
The goal isn't just saving dollars, it's saving lives.
It is probably the most irreversible thing that can happen to us as a living species, but I feel that there is some solace in that what's happening, I do believe, with good investments of our resources, whether that be physically, economically, socially, however you want to look at it. I think that there are some things that we can do to be preventive to avoid these premature events happening. And I think that's probably the biggest thing to be able to walk away from these situations, is that a lot of these deaths that are occurring are preventable.
Our coverage continues tomorrow. We sit down with the people who are on the ground fighting crime. I talked to St. Louis County's new police chief about the collaborative efforts across the region to fight violence.